And hello everyone, I'm John Beckman from the StubHub Center and LA Velo Sports Center in Carson, California, here for the final session of the 2017 UCI Paracycling Track World Championships. And we have several events online today, a lot of them being tandem sprints, and the tandem sprints for blind athletes with a sighted driver, about 300 to 350 pounds of athletes and machine going over 40 miles per hour around this 250-meter velodrome. And we'll be getting underway with that in just a couple of minutes. Let's talk about paracycling for a moment. For one thing, of course, the tandems, we've got the blind athletes, a blind stoker on the back of a tandem with a sighted pilot. Some of those sighted pilots are elite, internationally renowned elite cyclists on their own. We will also be seeing riders with certain disabilities in their body today, with that classification ranging from C5, which is minimal disability, perhaps some brain trauma allowing or causing a certain loss of coordination, all the way to C1, where there may be amputations. And of course, going from C5 to C1, the disabilities become a little bit greater. And let's talk about these. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, we're going to go into a little explanation of what we're about to see with the tandems, the match sprints. Over 70 kilometers an hour, they are up against Malaysia. And Rizan Mohammed Afiq Afifi driving, and Rasul Mohammed Karul Atta as the stoker. And they qualified about less than half a second behind Team 4 at just under 10.6 seconds, 68 kilometers an hour. So 68 kilometers an hour with the qualifying speed for the Malaysians, 70.5 kilometers an hour, the qualifying speed for Great Britain team number 4. And something I learned this morning was that being an American, I'm not quite familiar with the entire workings of the former British Empire, but Malaysia is a Commonwealth team, as are New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, and as such, they are here trying to qualify for the Commonwealth Games, as are the British and the Australian riders. And according to their results here at the World Championships, they garner world ranking points, and the top world ranking teams will qualify for the Commonwealth Games. And it's just not something that you hear of too much, where the top race in the world is qualifying you for something a little more quote-unquote local. But this race, not only meaningful for the title of world champion or a World Championships medal, but also important in order to gain world ranking points to qualify for the Commonwealth Games. Coming up this year, and I don't have a location of those games, but all the various parts of the world, of course, throughout the years. At one point, the sun never set on the British Empire. We'll be coming up on team sprint finals here momentarily. A very fascinating precision three-rider team event. But right now, utter concentration with the Malaysians there in the distinctive yellow jerseys. Rizan so Mohammed Karul Atta listening and watching from the front. Often considered a disadvantage to be at the front in a match sprint. You know, the only time it really matters to be in the front is at the finish line. So the guys from Malaysia having to look back. If this team of Faki and McLean are anything like the team of Ball and Rotterdam that rode against the Russian Federation in the previous heat, they've got a lot of power, a lot of acceleration, and great top-end speed. So these guys from Malaysia qualifying about 3 or 4 tenths of a second slower than the British. Staying at the front, going to make the British perhaps go around the long way. And look at this, the Malaysians coming up out of the sprinter's lane a bit, trying to make these British guys go a long way around. At the bell, the British using that power, and you can see the success of the British cycling program in elite and para competition. They have developed the most powerful riders in the world consistently, and it shows up here with another Great Britain team. 10.999, just under 11 seconds for the final 200 meters, and that is accelerating during that time. Not up to top speed at 200 meters to go, but still accelerating. 0.8 of a second off of their qualifying time, but again, we don't expect to see qualifying times in match sprints. About 11 seconds. About 65 kilometers per hour for Neil Fecke and Craig McLean as they simply overpower Malaysia. And we prepare now for the 3-lap team sprint final. We'll be back to our match sprints on the tandems in just a little while. They will get their rest between races while we have 2 rides for the medals in team sprint. And you are watching the 2000 and Rasul Mohammed Karul Adha. Qualifying just 0.3 of a second apart, so in an uninterrupted flying time trial on this track, these two teams have about the same amount of strength. What it may come down to is who's got better acceleration, who has better control over the other team. Great Britain has a lot of acceleration, a good kick at the end as they came over the top of Malaysia. They came around the outside, going a long way to win ride number 1 in 11 seconds, just under 11 seconds. In the first ride, Malaysia had drawn the lead, and so in the second ride, Malaysia will leave the line. They line up higher and leave the start line just a moment after the British team. The slowest race in cycling, the fastest race in cycling. In order to get there to the fastest, you've got to conserve energy. You've got to watch your opponent. Call this a game of cat and mouse, and indeed it is. You game theorists out there will look at perhaps the psychological aspects of how you might intimidate another team. You may make another team think that you're going to make a move. Right now, patience is the name of the game as the Malaysians content to not step on the gas and waste energy early on. They've got their eyes on the British. Very content here just to keep it at low speed. Sometimes we'll have a race go like this almost to the final lap, and then just a contest of acceleration. You have perhaps a smaller gear the mechanic has put on the bike, an easier gear to push, which will be easier to accelerate in a very short sprint, just a lap or lap and a half for these tandems. To out-accelerate your opponent, they never get a chance to come around you. Sometimes that is reflected in the 200-meter times that we see. We've recorded in these men's finals 200-meter times of 10.8, 10.7, and for this team here, Great Britain over Malaysia in ride number 1, it was about 11 seconds, which is about a second, 3/4 of a second slower than their qualifying time. Because perhaps you're simply trying to keep the sprint as short as possible. Don't let the other team get up to maximum speed. They could be thinking about the finals too, saving energy. If we can go out there and take the Malaysians, control them, keep them behind us all the way to the last lap, we can have a very short sprint and have more left in our legs when we take on our teammates in a final. or the Russian Federation in the final. Still in the saddle, 200 meters to go. These guys have a very short sprint. I think the Malaysians' legs are going around a little bit faster, but the British accelerating a bigger gear and just accelerating right away from Malaysia, and a 200-meter time of 11.5. Took them 11.5 seconds to do the last 4/5 of a lap out there, so you know that was a very short sprint consisting completely of acceleration. Nobody ever got up to top speed, but that was good enough for Great Britain to hold off the Malaysians, and it is Great Britain team number 4 unofficially against Great Britain team number 3 in the finals for gold and silver then, as both of those teams were victorious. 2 in a row over their teams, and we see here the acceleration of that big gear, the ankling motion of the feet, and it is really beautiful, and of course it is machine-enforced synchronicity between the feet, but you see those white shoes going around, and of course these are fixed gear bikes. As long as the wheel's turning, those pedals are still going around. Gradually getting 350 to 400 pounds of rider and bike to decelerate. It will be Great Britain against Great Britain in the finals for gold and silver. Russian Federation against Malaysia in the finals for bronze and 4th place. But when you've got to do it 9 times in a day with that maximum effort, yeah, a lot goes into it. And now to the men for the bronze medal. And a little harder for me to screw up this pairing here. For the bronze medal now, Russian Federation, Leonid Tyutin and Artur Spirin in the red jerseys. Were beaten 2 straight by Great Britain's Mr. Ball and Rotherham. Malaysia's Rizwan Muhammad Afiq Afifi with Rasul Muhammad Karul Hada were beaten by Great Britain team number 4, Faki and McLean. So the battle for the bronze commences. Up next will be the gold and silver medal first ride between Great Britain's Ball and Rotherham and Great Britain's Faki and McLean. Right now, Russian Federation. Leonid Tyutin, Artur Spirin. Just watching cautiously. They don't have to crane their necks, look back at anybody, but a lot of rubbernecking being done there by Rizwan Muhammad Afiq Afifi of Malaysia, and his vision impaired stoker Rasul Muhammad Karul Abda listening carefully. I cannot quite imagine what it is like to go careening around these 45-degree bankings at 40 to 45 miles an hour, or 65 to 70 kilometers an hour. Not seeing, but you know, the stoker has a lot of faith in the driver of a tandem, whether or not you're sighted. Quite the sensation. You get a little bit of a G-force. It's not like 2 or 3 or 4 Gs like flying an aerobatic airplane, but you do feel a little extra weight when you're going through these tight turns, and the bike is leaned over on some tracks and some speeds. The bike would be leaned over almost parallel to the ground. So it is indeed quite the thrill ride, up and down this banking. The Malaysians gaining some speed and some catching up for our gentlemen from Russia. They've got to catch up. They would have to really light the afterburners at this point. They don't make up all of that distance. A little miscalculation perhaps by Tyutin of Russia, and it is Rizwan Afiq Afifi and Rasul Karul Abda of Malaysia taking ride at number 1. 200-meter time of 10.8. From the front, The Russians unable to come around. And we will see these riders again in ride number 2 in their battle for the bronze as we go to the gold medal round. And while they prepare, we take a look at Malaysia, and you see how banked over through those turns they are. During training sessions, when people are on and off the track and some of the riders are just cooling down from their training on a track and they are on the apron, you've got to make sure you do not ride too far out towards the banking, because somebody can come by at 40 miles an hour and you can hit heads at 40 miles an hour because the people on the track and low on that sprinter's lane on the board track are leaned over so far. And so you want to stay a little bit away from the track surface if you're just the men before we will go back to the third and deciding ride for the women's bronze. We revisit our men's ride for the bronze. The winner of the first ride, team number 6, Malaysia, with Rizan Muhammad Afiq Afifi and his stoker Rasul Muhammad Karul Abdha. They won the first ride from the front. Around men of the Russian Federation and held on. The Russian Federation team number 7 in the red, Leonid Tyutin and Artur Spirin, want to win this one and tie it up. First ride, our riders from Malaysia were in the first starting position. They led the first lap and they just kept it at the front generally. So this time men from Russia are starting at the front and deciding to keep it right now. Hard to tell, but you take a look at the cadence, how fast the feet are going around of each of the riders. Perhaps you can see if one set of feet go around a little bit more over a distance than the other team's feet. Somebody might have a smaller gear on to enhance their acceleration. Another team might have a little bit higher gear on to enhance their top speed. Which strategy will win? And it's very difficult to tell this. But your gear relative to your opponent, or your gear just relative to your own ability. If you need more speed, if you don't think you're going to be able to contain your opponent and keep the sprint late in the race and relatively slow, then maybe you have your mechanic put on a big sprocket underneath that stoker. You see those sprockets, the big sprocket right underneath the back rider. That chain connects to the back sprocket on the wheel and makes your gear ratio. And one way or another, the Russian Federation, one gear or another, they were able to accelerate that baby very nicely past the Malaysians. The Malaysians with the first ride trying to come around the outside of the Russian Federation comes up. The Malaysians come over the top. And wow, we're going to have to take another look at that. Did Tyutin lose control? Did he try to just hook the Malaysians, maybe intimidate them? The line, though, changed quite a bit. The Malaysians still managed to come around. And we could have, maybe it's a rule infraction, maybe it's not. Maybe it was a mechanical problem. But here come the Malaysians on the replay. Nice and low, trying to minimize their distance around to the finish line. And the Russians, you look at that, the bike squiggled as the Russians came up, they backpedaled. Something went out of control on that Russian Federation bike. Are their tires too slick for the painted lines? Look at that, the rear wheel went again, and I wonder if they had a flat tire. There may have been a mechanical problem on the bike of the Russian Federation. And rather than losing control, I'd say that Leonid Tyutin and Artur Spirin did a fantastic job of keeping that bike under control as they had apparently a rear tire problem, and we saw that bike break loose, the rear end break loose twice in the last quarter lap. And so we'll investigate that. First over the line was the team from Malaysia, but I will wait and see if the ride is made official. The officials are talking through it now, and we'll await the announcement. Meanwhile, we prepare for the gold medal ride between two teams from Great Britain. They'll be up here momentarily. A little bit of a scare for the men from the Russian Federation. It's all part of a day's work for an elite level cyclist. Tandem racing is not for the faint of heart. In fact, bicycle racing in general, not for the faint of heart. You have interesting interactions with your opponents. Sometimes something goes wrong with the bike. The back tire of the Russian Federation's bike breaking loose a couple times there. They actually had to backpedal back off and slow that thing down. And the Malaysians happy. They're thinking that perhaps they are the bronze medalist in 2 rides straight, but we're waiting for the officials to make that announcement. Let's take another look at the final quarter lap. You see, after the bike cut loose one time, it almost took out the Malaysians. They came over the top. Now watch the Russians squiggle again right there. And typically that's indicative of low pressure in the tire. Scratch race by, and we'll get official versions of results and an award ceremony for them coming up shortly. As we're coming near the end of the program, we are going back to a re-ride, I understand, of that very sketchy, scary bronze medal final between Malaysia and the Russian Federation. You recall the final lap, the bike underneath Leonid Teutin and Artur Spirin was wiggling around a bit. Maybe they had a flat tire, and here's the replay. If you didn't see it earlier, a little scary moment as Malaysia's coming around. You see the Russians' bike just come out of the track, wiggling almost out of control, and then watch again. It happens again right about here. Boom. That tire not behaving properly, and so a re-ride of ride number 2. Now Malaysia, team number 6, with Rizan Muhammad Afiq Afifi driving. Rasul Muhammad Karul Abdha, our stoker. They won the first race from the front. They drew the front, and so they started lowest on the track and took the lead and maintained it the entire way. This time then, since Malaysia drew the front starting position for the first race, then the Russian Federation is automatically given the front position for the second race. And they are required just to keep the bike moving. For the early stages of the race, although sometimes it is considered such an advantage to be behind your opponent for reasons of drafting once the speed gets high, or for reasons of being able to watch your opponent or surprise attack from the back, that the team will slow down almost to a stop to try to force their opponents in front of them. Right now, a steady pace being maintained by Teutin and Spirin of the Russian Federation. I remember in the first attempt at this ride, at the second ride, the Malaysians were coming around the Russian Federation riders in the final turn when they had that tire problem. Looks like the Malaysians are waiting again. They had good speed coming around the Russian Federation in that final turn in the first iteration of this second ride. And so perhaps they think the same strategy will work again, of waiting until the final lap and then accelerating around the outside. You never know, though. Maybe the Russians have changed the gears. Maybe they've changed their tactics. At 1 to go, the Malaysians. All right, the Malaysians this time just jump over the top. They won the first one from the front. They won this one, it looks like, coming over the top at 1 to go. And Malaysia, unofficially your bronze medalists in our men's blind tandem competition. 6-lap match sprint, 200-meter time. That is the time of the last 4/5 of a lap was 10.75, so very close. Again, to your 200-meter time of the first one they won, and that is way over 65 kilometers an hour. The Malaysians, Rizan Muhammad Afiq Afifi and Rasul Muhammad Karul Abdah, unofficially bronze medalists in the 2017 World Championships. And here, this is such an important move in match sprinting. When do you make your move to come over the top? Look, the Russians looking to the left. Oh, these guys are coming over our right. Oops. And over the top go the Malaysians. The Russians not responding quickly enough and perhaps just don't have the power in the legs. Look at this, trying to hold that big bike down at 65 kilometers, 70 kilometers an hour, and the exclamation from driver Rizan Muhammad Afiq Afifi. And so they look forward to the third spot on the podium, a couple of medals. As we go now to as we approach the conclusion of these 2017 Paracycling World Track Championships. Looking for our men tandem sprints now. Their victory ceremony coming up in just a moment. And again, speeds of over 70 kilometers an hour reached out here by these gentlemen today. And a great combination of riders from Russia, Malaysia, and Great Britain making the finals.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention for the award ceremony of the UCI Paracycling Track World Championships. The medals and the jerseys will be presented by Mr. Mohamed Ben El Mahi, UCI Management Committee member, President of the Paracycling Commission. This is the award ceremony for the men's tandem sprint. In third place, and winners of the bronze medal, representing Malaysia, Muhammad Kirud Adaha Razol and Muhammad Afiq Afifi Rizan. In the second place, and winners of the silver medal, Neil Fatchy and Craig McLean from Great Britain. In first place, gold medalists and world champions, representing Great Britain, James Ball and Matthew Rotherham. The flowers will be presented by Mr. Chris Arenholt, managing partner of Medalist Sports. And now, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of the world champions, let's raise the flag and hear the national anthem of Great Britain. Ladies and gentlemen, please, one more time, put your hands together for our champions here this afternoon.